Greetings once again from the Oral History microphone. I'm Ray Mofield, and we visit around in various places in Marshall County looking for citizens, senior citizens who remember some of the ways Marshall County used to be, some of the older habits and customs and what have you. And today we're visiting Pauline Hiett at 900 Olive Street here in Benton. And thank you very much for allowing us to come.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to have you.
Well, we knew you for a long, long time as a clerk at Bill Tanner's IGA.
Yes, sir.
And I guess you worked there till you retired.
I did. I worked 19 years for him.
Yeah. Well, we'll get back and get started a little before that, though. You were born in Marshall County?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And your father was?
Harley Hunt.
Harley Hunt. And your mother was?
Etta Castleberry.
So we got the Castleberries and the Hunts together, and we produced Pauline.
That's right.
Good. Well, they're fine old families. Norman Castleberry was telling me one time that he'd done some research, and he'd found that some of his ancestors back in England or wherever it was the man named Berry who lived close to a castle.
Mm-hmm.
And so they called him the Castleberry. Of course, when we're getting our names, they sometimes meant occupations like tanner, for example.
Yes, sir.
Or carpenter, or what have you, farmer. Now, do you remember any of your grandparents?
Oh, yes. I remember both sides.
Well, you just tell us a little about them.
Okay. Now, my daddy died when I was 2 years old, and Mother went back home to her parents, Worth Castleberry and Frona, and then there was Uncle Dan and Aunt Willie and Uncle Boone. And I was raised by them. And you talk about somebody mean. Now, I mean, it really did. I was spoiled. Mother was not allowed to touch me. And she would put me to punish me, she'd put me in the smokehouse, and it would be dark. Well, she would put me in the smokehouse, and she would go back into the kitchen. Aunt Willie, Uncle Dan, or Uncle Boone, one of the other, would come right behind her and get me out.
Yes, so you knew you always had a rescuer.
Yes, sir, I sure did. And then I remember Granny and Grandpa Hunt, and they raised Daddy's sisters, 3 children, because she and her husband both died. And now that would be Uncle Fred and Uncle Clark. And
I remember Clark Hunt's Grocery.
Yes.
Famous landmark in Benton for a long, long time. In fact, I believe Bill Tanner bought that, didn't he?
Yes, sir, he did, in 1953. Now, Uncle Clark his old grocery was up there by the side of Lynn's funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
It would be on the other side of that house.
Yes.
That's up there now.
So the one that Bill Tanner bought was a different location,
yes, sir.
But just a successor to.
There was something funny happened up there in this old building that I think people will enjoy. Mr. Amos Pace, was real tall.
Yes, I remember him.
A fella. And he came to Uncle Clark's grocery, and of course Uncle Clark's grocery was just an old-timey grocery. And he had some razor blades that was on cardboard, and he had it tacked up on these rafters or something. Well, Mr. Amos got under one of those, and when he went home, well, it wasn't but a few minutes till he came back, and he had about 6 or 7 packages of razor blades that had fallen off in his hat.
Lodged on. That is amusing, but he was honest enough to return them.
Yeah, I thought that was real.
Was that, let's see, well, I'm trying to think. No, I guess Houston Pace's brother. That might have been Houston's brother.
Now, I really don't know.
I'm not sure. They lived around Hardin. And, well, anyway, I remember Mr. Amos. Very, very kind and gentle man,
Yes,
although
he
he
was.
by the standards of that day, more or less a giant. Wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He was really tall.
Yeah. All right, now, where did you grow up and go to school in Benton? Or-
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
You didn't get the privilege of going out into
A country school.
country
No,
school like
no.
Jamie Bell went to Oak Valley.
Oh, she did.
Did you ever hear of that?
Yes, I've heard of that.
The University of Oak Valley,
Mhm,
we call it.
mhm.
And they're having a reunion. I believe it's the third Saturday in August. All you can eat, and if you want to come and eat all you can, well, you just come on.
I remember Janie Bell's daddy. I'll never forget this. I don't know just exactly what grade I was in at school, but they had a play at school, and the leading lady and man in the play, they were up on the stage and talking about going. The boy said, "Let's go out and look at the moon." And Mr. Esri, talked real long and slow. He came in and he said, "There's a cloud over the moon."
Oh, boy. Was he ever your mail carrier?
No,
Oh,
no.
well, he enjoyed that, and he worked, I don't know what line it was, but somewhere here in Benton.
Hmm.
Well, that's very good. Now, what did you like best in school?
Oh, I liked school. Now, I didn't like it at first. I'll tell you some of my teachers' names.
Okay,
Now,
that's
there's
good.
one that I've forgotten. The first grade teacher was Mary Brown. The second was Nanny Eads. The third was Zera Grubbs. The fourth was May Coleman. And the fifth was Miss Ruby Wade. And now I don't remember who the sixth one was. The seventh one was Mabel Peel. Now that was Dwight Peel's sister. And this lady was not from Benton. The eighth grade teacher was Miss Saunders. And then Miss Elizabeth Lovett was my home ec teacher. And then the professors were Mr. Mulligan, Mr. Chambers, and Mr. Whittenberg. And Miss Addie Fawn.
Oh, she was a great English teacher, wasn't
yeah. I took Latin and Caesar under her. And I really did make good grades.
she? All Gaul is divided into 3 parts.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, those were wonderful days.
And now the first year, I just went to school 5 days. Like I was telling you, I was spoiled, and Mother wouldn't make me go, and I was afraid. I was a mother's baby, so I wouldn't go to school. And one morning, Uncle Boone and I would meet Lorena Morgan Hill, that's Mattie Jo Smith and Morgan Hill's mother, and Ralph Fisher up on the road. So when we got to where they were, Ralph said, he called me Pawnee. He said, "Pawnee, did you know that Jack got a whipping yesterday?" Oh, I got sick, real sick, and Uncle Boone had to walk me back home.
Yeah.
And I didn't
Now,
go.
was he a Baptist preacher?
Yes, sir.
I thought I remembered that.
Uh-huh.
Now,
He's-
his wife was Huntus Trevathan,
That's right.
and was in the first class at Hardin High School.
Yes, sir. Mhm.
We really enjoyed her coming up from Cincinnati. Her daughter brought her as long as she was able. She hasn't been dead many years. as
No,
I recall.
she's just been dead a little over a year, because last Mother's Day, as a year ago, was the first time that Margaret didn't have a mother, and so she hasn't been gone too long. And would you like to know how good I was at school?
Oh, of course.
Oh, well, okay. Now, I'm going to call some names that they may not like this, but Daisy Hauser, you know Daisy.
Oh, yes, I know Daisy
Okay.
Hauser.
And Charlene Darnell and I bumped Jessie Wade Cole against the radiator on her birthday. Her birthday was the first day of February. So we bumped her on this radiator, and it was right at a window, and she kicked the window light out.
Well,
And Mr. Wittenberg was the principal, and he was really tough. So we went and found the janitor, Uncle Pony Hicks. Everybody loved Uncle Pony Hicks. And he walked to Teresa's from the schoolhouse and got a window pane and put it in that window. And Mr. Wittenberg never did know that it had been kicked out.
you had a friend there.
Oh, we really did have a friend there. And then there's some more thing. Now this is really one of the worst ones that I ever heard of. There was some students that came from Brownsburg, and they brought their lunch with them, and they parked over across the street from the schoolhouse. And so one day, Jessie Cole and I was always running around outside, and they had thrown a boiled egg out of their lunch box that they didn't want. And we got that boiled egg, and we went to Morgan and Heath and swapped it for 2 suckers.
You mean they took it in trade?
Yes, they took it in trade.
Did they know it was boiled?
No, they didn't know it was boiled.
That's what I was thinking.
And now I have down here that these mischievous things that we all did.
Yeah.
I wanted to say one thing, and now this may be surprising to a lot of people, but now Margaret Heath was no angel in school.
Oh, that's the funniest thing. I'm having lunch with her today at noon, so I want to make sure that I remind her of that.
Yes.
She'll laugh.
Oh, we have more fun together than anything.
Yeah.
And then you wanted us to talk about some of the things that the older people did.
Yes.
Now, Grandpa always invited everybody to our house to eat or to stay all night. And now, I guess you know what a call porter is. I think that's the way you pronounce it. It was a person that back in those days went around with his suitcase full of books, and of course these would be Baptist books, and he went to different places to sell books.
They peddled those just like peddlers peddle groceries by your house, didn't they? Yeah.
And so Grandpa would invite them to come and to stay all night. And then also the tobacco buyers. They went over the county, buying tobacco. And so they would come to our house to stay all night. And of course they always got there just about supper time.
Just happened to be there at meal time.
And we had an old iron stove out under an apple tree. And of course we wouldn't be prepared for them. And Mother would go out and build a fire in this old iron stove, and then she'd call the chickens up, and she'd catch a fryer and dress it and cook it for supper.
My mother could just seem like just barely whip a chicken's neck, and it just popped off, and other people would wrestle with them for an hour. There was a knack to that.
Yes, there was. But just think about
starting from killing the chicken.
Yeah.
Why, that'd scare today's housewife to death.
Well, yeah. Here I am now. I don't even want to cut one up after it's dressed.
No.
Well, they would, and she'd usually fry potatoes, and then if they had beans or anything cooked right, then they would have, of course, we always called it supper. And
I don't know if there are any grocers that cut them up like my mother did, but when she got through with it, there was always a pulley bone.
That's right, but you don't find pulley bones now.
No.
Now, my grandmother was, these people, the tobacco buyers and the call porters, would stay all night. And my grandmother was so afraid that they would bring a bed bug in their clothes or in their suitcase, that after they left the next morning, you had to take the bed apart and go over every bit of it and look in the corners of the feather bed, you know, and in the corners of the straw bed tick, and look it over. And then you took the bed apart, and you got you some coal oil and some turpentine and a tail feather out of a chicken, and you went all over that bed with turpentine and coal oil.
If you ever got the rascals in the house, they multiplied like mad.
Oh, yes. And so she was really afraid of them. I think when they moved there, they had them in the house. And so she had got rid of them, and she sure didn't want any more. And then I wanted us to talk a little bit about air conditioning. You know, we can't live now without an air conditioner.
Oh,
you know,
no.
You've got to have one in the car, and anywhere you go, in campers, air conditioner and all. Well, in our old staying room, there was 2 beds and 2 small windows and 1 outside door. And Granny and Aunt Willie and Mother and I all slept in this staying room. And on the very hottest days, in July and August or any time, they would have a big washing. Uncle Dan was an old bachelor, and you know how particular they are. He had to have 2 or 3 white shirts a week. Uncle Boone was a preacher, and of course he had to have several shirts a week. Well, on the very hottest days, they would build a fire in this fireplace, in this room, a staying room. And then they had 4 flat irons, and they would iron most of the day. And they didn't do like we do now. They ironed everything. The tea towels and your socks and shorts and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, when the ironing was done, well, then they brought in a big 5-gallon bucket and put the remaining fire in it. And they'd take it out to the yard and pour water on it. And then we went to bed in that room.
Oh, it was hot as blazes.
I am sure that the thermometer would have registered around 100. Oh, it would be so hot that it was just terrible. And now this old house that we lived in, it would go good with that song, This Old House. There was, the floor, of course, was made out of wide planks. And it had been there so long, and the floor was seasoned, and of course they had cracks in it. And
sometimes you could look down and see a chicken walking under the house.
Oh, yes.
Where we lived, I remember.
Yeah. And Mother and Granny, would weave, take rags, you know, and sew them together and weave. They wove a carpet to put in this staying room. Well, it was beautiful. It was just like carpets like we think now it's so pretty, you know. Well, that was pretty to us. And they put this carpet down on the floor. And in March, when the wind was blowing real hard, well, the wind would get under the house and lift that carpet up, and you walked on it just like you was walking on water.
I remember exactly. We were sharecroppers and rented old houses that weren't very good, I can just see now my mother's curtains standing out from the wall. The windows were, to put it mildly, kind of loosely fitted, and the wind would blow right through there. And many times, I imagine you have too, have seen a little bit of drifted snow that had come up in places.
Yeah. A house just as cold in the summertime as it could, in the wintertime as it could be, and then hot in the summertime.
Did you ever put the water bucket on the hearth to keep it from the dipper from freezing in there, and keep the water from bursting the bucket it was in?
Yes. You brought in everything. You brought the eggs in and set them around the fireplace. And of course you had a churn. You had to have your milk fixed there. And then I worked at the 10-cent store. I started out thinking about 1935, and Thomas Morgan owned the store. and now we went to work at 8 o'clock of a morning, and we had lunch, and we had a little time off for our evening snack, and we worked till 10 o'clock that night. And we...
The stores were open.
That's right. And we made $1.25 a day. Now, I'm not saying an hour. I'm
No.
saying a day.
Yeah.
But it's so funny now to drive through Benton on Saturday afternoon and Saturday night and not see any cars. Because back then, the cars were lined all over the square. Everybody came to town on Saturday night. And we just had a ball. They wouldn't be much, they wouldn't buy very much, but they come in, you know, and visited.
And see people.
And see people. And then Galen and I operated a service station from about...
Now that was your husband.
That's right.
Now tell me how you met him.
Well, we were out at Ralph Fisher's to a play party. You know what a play party
Oh
is?
yes, I've been to a few.
Yeah. And I was, I had long hair, and it was in curls, and I think that I was about 12 years old, and they had to move the things out, you know, so they could play. And I was sitting up on this table, and Galen was there with his sweetheart. I don't remember who it was, but anyway, he was there with her. And every time that he danced around, he flipped my curls.
Yeah.
And he said that that was when he fell in love with me.
Yeah.
And so we operated this service station until 1949. And he got in such bad health that we had to quit. Now, I pumped gas. I put air in the tires. I filled up the radiator with water.
Did you have those old pumps where you took your hand and moved it back and forth, and it was in a glass bowl up there, and you drained it down and looked at a little measuring stick up along the side?
No. Now we had one over to the side that was this high test gas, but the other two that was out
electric.
front, were electric. You want to know about how we got rid of that old pump over to the side?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Okay. Walker Meyer was working over at Govey Smith's, just right across the street from. Now the service station we ran was where Kurt Phillips's.
Chevrolet Garage.
Yeah, that
okay.
little station over there. So this gas tank was out there by the side, and Galen wanted a modern one. And Guff wouldn't put it up. So one day Walker was over there. Walker would run the wrecker, drove the wrecker, you know. And he was over there getting some gasoline, and he said, "Galen, did you say you wanted that pump, that you want a better pump than that?" And he said, "Yeah, I sure do." So Walker just drove up there a little piece and backed up and knocked the pump over. So
And he was sheriff later,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
yeah.
I remember him.
So we got a new pump, and I swept out the cars, and I cleaned their windshield. Back then, service, you had to sell your product with service.
And now they make us do everything ourselves.
That's right. And it was the service station that gave the best service was the one that got the business. And then from 1949 until 1953, I worked for C.C. Hunt, which was my uncle. And then he sold to Mr. Tanner. Now, he ran the place, operated the place where Jack Lyles is now, called Midtown.
Yes.
And
I remember that quite well.
And then Mr. Tanner bought him out in 1953, and I think that we stayed there until about 1972. And
Then you went down on East 12.
Yes, sir. Where the
Health department is?
The health department is. And now I want to say this one thing about Mr. Tanner. he was one of the best managers that I've ever seen.
Well, he told me you were one of the best clerks he ever had. So, and I believe he said that when he bought that you came by and very courteously said, well, I'll resign, and you may not want me or some such thing. And then he said, I believe he told me you worked 23 years for it.
Yeah. I told him, I said, I'll work for you 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
And so that ended up that it was much longer than that. But everything had to be just exactly right with him. You just let a cookie fella come in there and put some stale cookies or these little cakes that are stale. Now, they didn't get to come back many times.
He was looking out for his customers.
Oh,
though.
yes. And he was really a good manager. And as I say, he wanted you to do the things and to do them right. And that's the way it always turned out, that was the best way. Now, Galen and I, we had a farm, and of course, I didn't make much working. Well, I made the average wages back then.
Mm-hmm.
And then Galen, we
Sounds little now, but it bought a lot more.
yeah. Mm-hmm. And Galen farmed, and of course, we didn't make much off of that. And one year, the army worms like to beat up our beans or something. So Galen bought a spray and started spraying these army worms. And other people, a lot of people around here had these elm trees, you know, that the worms gets on and eats them up.
The blight killed nearly all of them.
Uh-huh. And so people got to come in and call on us and see if we'd spray their trees. And then we sprayed under some houses for roaches and things. We weren't allowed to spray for termites, but we did spray under some of them for roaches. Now, we did that for about 2 years. And we would spray until about 11 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd come home and fix a little lunch, and of course, you know, it would have to be a little one. Then I'd go to work down at Mr. Tanner's about 12:30, and then I'd work till 7:30 that night.
Mm-hmm.
I see, I know what work is.
Yes, you do. I can certainly understand that. Well, we have about 3 more minutes to go. Now, if you have things that you especially want to get on, that'll give you some idea.
Okay, I just wanted to say something about my Uncle Fred Hunt. His birthday was Wednesday. He was 90 years old. I went down to visit.
You mean he's still living?
Yes.
Well.
I went to visit him on Tuesday because they said it was going to rain Wednesday, so I went a day early. He was down in his garden, and it would be at least a 2-acre patch, and he was hoeing down there. And
Now,
so
gooseneck hoeing is hard work.
yeah, and he was wet as sweat when he got up there where we were. He had to climb a steep bank to get up there. And I'm so proud of him because he and his little boy, or his son, live there alone. And now his daughter, Leviathan Powell, of course, cooks cakes and maybe makes cornbread and things like that and takes to him.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, he does the cooking and all. And
self-sufficient, practically.
that's right. And that house was, well, it was much cleaner than mine, just as clean as it could be. And I think that's grand. He was 90 the 4th day of June, and able to do that.
That indicates that he must have lived a good, upright life.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Anyway, if you want your days to be long on the earth, you honor your father and mother, and he must have done that.
Well, yes, he did. And most everybody else. I never heard him speak of any harm of anybody in my life.
Well, it's been a real pleasure for me to talk to you. Do you remember life's most embarrassing moment? Or anything that was funny? You've told a lot of funny things, And I
well,
want to keep in mind Miss Margaret Hiett.
oh, I want you to.
That's a jewel
Yeah.
there.
You know, when she was Grand Marshal of Tater Day,
Mm-hmm.
after that, I wrote her a letter, and I started out that, let me see, Adam was the first man,
Mm-hmm.
and he operated on Eve, made a woman from his rib, and he never was asked to be Grand Marshal of Marshall County.
No.
And then Noah built the ark, and he was never asked to be Grand Marshal. And